Hello, are you out there? I'm Mark with HFG Reviews, and I've got Homebrew Hunting Horn coming from our own Outrageous Maximum. So this is an item. We don't get so many of those, but I'm glad we have one. This is a magic weapon based on the magic class, or a weapon class from Monster Hunter. The hunting horn is a large instrument such as bagpipes, guitar, or a drum that plays music when you bash a creature on the head with it. Each type of attack is associated with a note, and if you play a song with those notes, you bestow a buff on yourself or your allies. So I did, in fact, pre-read this. Now, normally I try and do a cold read on everything, but I was getting down here into the notes, and I was like, an L note? Crud, I didn't know the music scale went that high. I don't know anything about music. But I have some ideas. Here we go. I tried to recreate the concept in D&D. This would be most useful on a mixed bard fighter. It is pretty powerful, allowing spells to be cast with free actions, but I think that the setup and planning balances that out. It's also pretty complex for a magic item. I think that it is more simple in execution, but I could be wrong. If you can think of good ways to simplify the wording and mechanics while keeping with the core concept, that would be appreciated. Here we go. Hunting Horn. Magical melee weapon. This weapon has the same statistics as a maul, which is a beefy two-handed martial weapon. So as far as I know with the bard class, you cannot use martial weapons such as a maul. I think you use like a rapier or something like that, but not a maul. So you would have to at least multi-class one level into... Doesn't have to be fighter, honestly. Paladin, fighter, ranger, I think could all use a maul. But you're going to have to drop a level into there to get access to this. The weapon can be used as a bardic focused. Right. So here we go. Weapon has the same statistics as a maul, which is like a 2d6 two-handed heavy weapon. A maul weighs 10 pounds, and so I think that kind of makes sense. Is like, this musical instrument you have is magical. It is massive. It's big. I mean, obviously, most of us don't really play with probably weight and encumbrance that much, but yeah, it's like you're carrying on a jump kit or a very big instrument. Obviously, the magic makes it durable beyond normal reckoning because you can beat enemies over the head with it, dealing significant bludgeoning damage. So I think that all works really well. But yeah, you're going to have to dip into one martial class level at least to get the ability to use a maul. And then other than that, you do have to have at least one level into bard. So the other way around is you could be like a fighter going, multiple levels in fighter, and you dip into bard one time to be able to get access to the spells that you're going to cast with this, as well as just the ability to attune to the weapon. I think this is an important balancing act, though, is it prevents any single class from just picking up one of these magical weapons, one of these hunting horns, and using it as a weapon without proper training. So yeah, you have to be a little martial, you have to be at least a little bard, and that bard is also going to give you access to your spells. So you may want to go more than a single level into bard to get the spell slots and to get the spells and cantrips you want to cast with this. All right, here we go. When you make an attack with this weapon, you play one of three notes. These are not actual notes on a musical scale. I found out. Yeah. Doesn't go to L. Doesn't. I don't know why. It makes zero sense to me, music, but what are you going to do? So an L note, the attack has a -2 to hit and a +2 to damage. Add a low note to the melody. Middle note, attack is made normally. Add a middle note to the melody. High note, the attack has a +2 to hit and a -2 to damage. Add a high note to the melody. Now, essentially, these are all roughly even types of attacks. The L, the M, the H, low, middle, high, because the advantages, disadvantages kind of wash out. I have some ideas on this, but we'll come back to it. Let's get through the rest of the items so we understand what it's supposed to do, and then we'll make some maybe little recommendations for light tweaks and clarifications. Your melody is comprised of the four most recent notes you've played in the same order you played them. Choose up to 3 bard spells you know that have a casting time of 1 action or 1 bonus action, and choose a combination of notes for each spell to create a spellity of the same level as the spell. Essentially, this is the bard sitting around the campfire at night or in the inn, writing out new little songs to themselves. Sitting there with their journal, writing out, no, this, and writing out the notes and the words to a song is what this represents. Up to 3 of them. And that you are going to literally write out on a piece of paper at the table as the player, LM, H, MLM will be this spell, LH will be this cantrip, and you get up to 3 of them. You get to compose 3 songs to have at any one time. So you don't actually get to make a massive journal of these active at any time, which I think is important. Okay, so cantrip and level 1 spellities are 2 notes long. Level 2 and 3 spellities are 3 notes long and must have at least 2 different note types. Level 4 and 5 spellities are 4 notes long and must use each note at least once. 4 notes total. You cannot make spellities with spells above 5th level. Important to note. I would specify that your spellities, your notes, cannot repeat the same note twice. So you can't go MML, right? But you can go like, LM, LMH, you can go LMHM, but you can't use 2 in a row, depending on how you're building them up. And I do have a reason for this, we'll get to. If after you make an attack, your melody contains the same notes in the same order as one of your spellities, you can cast the spell associated with that spellity immediately as a free action. The spell is cast at minimum level and uses your hunting horn as the somatic and verbal components. That's right. Just the way you're playing it and the noise it makes as you're beating your opponent with it is sufficient. If the spell has a material component, you don't need them unless they cost more than 1 GP. Your melody then resets. But you do need the spell component if it costs more. And I would assume you would just throw the special, the 5 silver fish scales on the drum head and it makes a noise and they evaporate in the casting of the spell. Yeah, something like that. During a long rest, you can change the spells and the note combinations for your spellities. That's right. So anytime, the bard is taking a break, they can write new songs and rearrange the 3 spellities they have memorized and the note combinations if they should so choose. I think for flavor, that's fun, but I don't know really how important. I guess if you're going to adjust from cantrips, 1st level spells, 2nd, 3rd level spells, or 4th or 5th level spells, you would need to adjust whether it's 2 notes, 3 notes, or 4 notes, because they are done up that way. So let's see an example of how it's used, and then we'll talk over the mechanics. Example: Ozzy Osbourne is a 5th level fighter, 5th level bard attuned to the hunting horn. He has prepared 3 spellities. LH is a thunder wave, MHM is a kinetic jaunt, HML intellectual fortress. Ozzy has 2 attacks. He plays a low note on his first, misses, but still adds the low note to his melody. So he's made an L. That's right. Even though he's missed, he can still play that note. Ozzy uses his 2nd attack. He plays a high note, hits, and subtracts 2 from the damage. That's right, because a high is minus plus 2 to attack, minus 2 to damage. So trade-off. And he's got an LH there built up in his melody. Since his melody contains LH, he can now cast Thunder Wave using a 1st level slot as a free action. He does this and resets his melody to 0. Now, interestingly, a clever bard or fighter bard could make sure that their spellity list builds on itself. LH, LHM, LHML. So that they have the ability, or they could even try to do a repeat. You could do an LH, LHL, LHLM, and then you could set this as an LH, an LHL, or an LHLM spell, right? You could build them up so that as you're building your melody, you can decide, I want to fire this off right now at the first LH, or no, I'm going to wait till I get to LHL and fire it off. And you could even go further than that. You could have a H, you could go LH, and so you could, when you hit the last LH, you're back to Thunderwave again. So by stacking your spellity notes, you can have them build while always being castable, and then being castable in series where you come back around to the original. So different things like that. I might be overthinking it, but that's what I would do. I'd make sure that they all are represented by the notes. Maybe it's a little less creative in the theme of writing note songs, but let's be honest, the L's, the H's, and the M's aren't really notes. So in that sense, it's pretty meta-mechanical anyway, so why not just stack those out that way? I do like the fact that it doesn't require a hit to build a note, because it would be awfully hard to build up to something. Like I at first I was thinking, oh, what if you have to hit each hit and you have to hit them in succession, and then when you've completed that, then you get to cast it? I think the risk of missing and resetting your melody to the beginning would be too traumatic. You wouldn't get enough out of it. Yeah. The player will need to keep track of the last 4 notes they played. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, again, I would specify very specifically, I would specify in here that you cannot repeat the same note twice. Otherwise, you could have people gaming it heavily, like I'm suggesting, where they would just go L, 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 L. And their spell songs would be Thunderwave is an L, L. Kinetic Jaunt is an L, L, L. And Intellectual Fortress is an L, 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 L. Right? So it's just always wrapping around a building no matter what. You can see why you have to specify cannot repeat a note. And I don't think you did that up here. I don't think you specify you can't repeat. So, I'm just re-looking over here. Yeah. Each note must... You must use one note at least once. You say that, but I'd still say no repeats, personally. This is why. I think that this is quite powerful. A maul attack is no joke. And eventually, the fighter's going to get 2 attacks, 3 attacks per turn if you were to go fighter and you were like able to do like a lot of, swings with his hunting horn, magic instrument, guitar, or whatever. Brass instrument. I don't know. It's trombone of, it's like. But here's what I think you need to change. I think the fact that the low note, the middle note, and the high note are all washes. They either give a minus and a plus, or neutral, or a plus and a minus. I think it's too much to be able to be making good, solid attacks with a beefy 2-handed weapon that essentially function the same as any maul attack in the capable hands of a fighter. That's dangerous. I think that the low note, the high note shouldn't have the pluses. I think a low note should be a -2 to hits with no plus to damage. And I think the high note should be a -2 damage with no plus to hit. And that's the trade-off. By requiring that you alternate notes every time, you'll try to build in your middle notes as often as possible just to get normal, good hits in. But you will have to, for any spellity you do, you're either going to have to take a -2 to your chance to hit or a -2 to the damage to get any spellity off. And that little bit of trade-off there on whether you're going to hit or how much damage you're doing is making up for the fact that once you've made your attack attempts with this solid, good maul weapon that's doing 2d6 damage every time you hit with it, and now it's triggering that free action cantrip, that free action first, second, third, or fourth level spell. Fifth level? You cannot go above 5th, but you can do 5th. So yeah, I would just say that by using these, by trying to cast in this way and attack in this way, you're going to have detriments on essentially every other attack you make. If you're trying to build, beyond a 2-note spellity. Yeah. Did I have something else? Crud, I thought there was something else. Oh, I would also specify while you are building a melody, you cannot cast an additional cantrip or spell of any sort. That's not in here, but I would do it. Otherwise, I could see a warrior making 2 attacks, and then on their bonus action, because they are classes in the bard, are casting a bonus action cantrip as well, all the while building this up. And now you're getting, the attacks, you're getting bonus action casts, and potentially you're then popping off free action spellities. I think it's a little too powerful, a little too OP. Giving free action spell casting is good, but yeah, that's my idea. I think it's awesome. I think it's a great theme. I think the fact that you're requiring at least a dip into 2 classes for multi-class means, yeah, you're not giving this someone right away. They are going to have to commit a little bit to a bard, commit a little bit to a martial class, probably a fighter, to make this work. They're going to have to find the hunting horn or whatever the magical item is that they have to attune to. This isn't just something you get to pick up at level 1. I get that there's a lot of commitment, but I think that you need to add those couple of things where you can't repeat the same note twice. You cannot cast any other spell while building a melody. And maybe make that addition to where you get rid of the pluses on the low note and the pluses on the high note. You only have the -2s. Slight detriment, but it's real, and it's kind of offsetting just what the fighter's doing. Imagine you just got your regular fighter standing next to this fighter bard, and the fighter's got a maul, and the fighter bard's got his hunting horn guitar. Yeah. Okay. That's it. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think for complexity, I don't think it is. It leans towards being harder to understand. It is more complex, but given outrageous maximums, complexity of some of the stuff they put up here, this isn't that bad. I think the way you've written it is a good example. It's really just about a page. If you get rid of the description at the beginning, the actual rules are just a page long. It's not that hard. I like your example for Aussie here. Very good. Yeah, give it a little more clarity on some of those things. I would say balance it. I think it's turned up a bit too much in terms of power balance. I think you're sitting at like an A++. So I think you need to tone it down with 1 or 2 of my suggestions, just so it's not OP. Hey, yeah, make it as strong as you can, but make it comparably strong to other really strong, things you can do. It's interesting because it's not just an item. It's like an item build almost, like, because you do have to kind of build the character specifically to use it. So it's very cool and mechanical and crunchy in that sense. But I could see putting this in for a character, for a player, letting them try it. If they know it, they understand it, they want to commit to it, I would totally put this in as a DM. It's a solid bit of homebrew. That's it. Long enough. Am I recording? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Outrageous, and thank you if you've watched. Take care.